podcast. We are coming to you live for the first time with video after several attempts. We're pretty sure this one's working. John, what's your confidence level right now? Confidence level.
Are we doing like 1 to 10?
You're right.
I have like an innate confidence in myself to do things I shouldn't be able to do. So I have a solid 8 that this is working.
Yeah.
Now, if this was like my confidence, like if this was my confidence level on doing something basic, like cut a straight line on like a piece of construction paper, it'd be near 0. But we are, we're at a high mark right now. I'm feeling good.
Right. Yeah, I'm at a good 9. It's third time's the charm.
You're at a good 9?
How many times we've done this so far?
Well, there you go. add a 0 to that, and you're right. But hey, we're here. We're back.
We're here. Yeah, just in time for the Jaguars season to be over. 5-6 days ago in Kansas City, they lost to the Chiefs 27-20 in the divisional round. John, takeaways, just personally, emotionally, I guess, from the season ending.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like the most different ending to a season I've ever experienced covering a team because, well, for one, last year during Week 18, I had COVID, so I was able to actually, watch this game without, hacking up a lung completely. But it was definitely a feeling of fair. It was definitely a feeling of not like they obviously missed out, on something because this was a game that they very easily, could have won. In my opinion, there were 3 plays. The Foye dropped interception, the Agnew fumble, and the Kirk drop that really determined that game. And that I think if 2 of those plays go the other way, I think the Jaguars personally win that game. But it wasn't like after 17, like a feeling of, oh crap, we just completely missed our chance. It was like a feeling of, it sucks that this run is over and that this specific team is kind of done playing because, the NFL is the not-for-long league for a reason. They aren't going to be the same team, next year that they were this year. And I think people, the city fell in love with this team. I think this team, fell in love with itself. It was the tightest Jaguars team I've been around. And, I've been around some close teams like that 1-15 team. They were close. I mean, they had to be because they literally had nothing else. But it was just one of those seasons. So it was definitely a somber ending. But I think me and you said it once they won the AFC South. Anything from that point is gravy. And in my opinion, to kind of go toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes in a game that you arguably should have won, in Doug Peterson's first year, kind of building this program, I'm not really sure what else you can ask for.
Yeah, hold on. I think we're having some technical difficulties.
No, we're not. We did this last time.
I'm gonna check the stream
this time. Don't worry.
Really quick. What I was gonna say in response to that is it was definitely different in that they'll be able to come back from this, and it's not it's completely over and that was our only chance. But there was a little bit of that just because of the Patrick Mahomes injury. There was 3 big plays that you mentioned, and then there was Arden Key and Walker Little each had big penalties. There's, I'm sure, 1 or 2 other big plays that swung it. But the fact that Patrick Mahomes was basically playing on or just one leg for the majority of the game, that one kind of made it feel okay, we're always kind of playing with house money and we're just happy to be here in the playoffs. But the fact that happened was maybe something slipped away a little bit.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the fact that when you look at the game, officially, no matter how it happened, Chad Henne had a 98-yard touchdown drive that, when you lose a game by 7 points, arguably the Chad Henne drive is what kind of defined it. And it felt like, things were different for the Jaguars when, the Chiefs got the ball, Chad Henne going in there at the 2-yard line. Once he scored that touchdown, though, it felt like the Chiefs were, kind of just, team of destiny. And he didn't do anything particularly impressive. His average yards per pass was 3.3 or something like that. Yeah. So he was literally just throwing it as quickly as possible. You had the 39-yard run from Pacheco. You had a 15-yard penalty on Arden Key, which to me was already a soft penalty. But then to see them not throw the flag on Kalen Saunders for, in my opinion, a more egregious, type of hit later was weird. But I thought of Travis Kelce, he had 17 targets, which is absolutely hilarious because everybody knew going into the game that the Chiefs were going to spam, to Travis Kelce. But
Right.
I mean, 97 yards. It's not like he had that many big plays that killed them. He had obviously the 2 red zone touchdowns, which we kind of figured if the Jaguars let the Chiefs into the red zone, they were going to score. The Jags weren't a great red zone defense this season, especially against tight ends. But man, I felt like, again, the Jaguars, they were 3 plays away from being right there. And like you said, missed opportunity, but I'll take Mahomes on one ankle over, still most nearly every quarterback in the league sans Chinny.
Yeah, I mean, that drive was pretty brutal just because it was a former Jaguar, but it definitely felt like just a flashback to Alex Smith.
It wasn't brutal because it was a former Jaguar. It was brutal because it was Chad Henne.
That too. I mean, yeah, it's Chad Henne. But, like,
but
the fact that he's a former Jaguars, that helps this thing.
Yeah, I will say it was a reality hit when they said, 15th or whatever year, 15th year veteran Chad Henne. It's like, holy crap, dude, he's been here this long. I remember the days of the Chad Henne, Blaine Gabbert quarterback debates on Twitter. That's how deep these roots go into football Twitter. I remember those being legit debates, and now I look back on it, and I'm like, God, man, there were children that could have been raised during that time. There were hobbies that could have been fulfilled.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my beard wasn't that great quite yet. Haven't been around as long.
You had a take. Yeah, come on, right now, tell me who do you think you would have went for in 2013?
I was in middle school during those arguments. I was having takes on the bus to school at 6 a.m.
7th or 8th grade. 7th or 8th grade.
Probably 8th.
I was in 10th grade when I started firing takes off on Twitter.
So that explains a lot.
You gotta slip your game up. You're not a true poster, but nonetheless.
Started late. Kelce started earlier though. From an X's and O's standpoint, was there anything that you saw from the Jags of what they tried to do, what they should have done, etc.?
I say this knowing that I'm just not realizing while we're recording live that I did not send you the all 22 film of the game, but
I didn't want to watch it anyway.
Yeah,
I'm too burnt at this point. Too burnt out.
I understand. It's like once the season's over, you're like, what's the point?
Right.
I thought watching it live that they did try to bracket coverage him. In my opinion, they always had somebody on him. But Doug Peterson was asked about it after the game. I tweeted that he didn't seem that disappointed in their efforts against him because he basically was like, yeah, he had a lot of catches, but it was mostly short completions and stuff on scramble drills, which most coaches will scratch up scramble drills to, there's nothing you can really do about it, if it's completed, especially against Patrick Mahomes and Kelce, who are probably the best scramble drill duo in the entire NFL. I mean, Mahomes on that first touchdown drive made 3 or 4 throws alone that would be top 10, top 15 throws of this entire season from anybody. He was on his way to a historic day if he didn't get hurt.
Yeah, he's not on SportsCenter enough.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought that overall, their plan against Kelce was mostly fine. It was just, he was getting open on those plays. And then in critical situations, I mean, it's 3rd and 6. It's just hard to stop a 6-yard completion to Travis Kelce.
Right.
It just is. And they picked on the linebackers. They picked on Devin Lloyd and Chad Muma because that's what teams did all season. It's the chess game in football. Doug Peterson, he picks on a defense's weakness every week. The Jaguars' weakness, week in and week out was, the rookie linebackers and coverage. I mean, Gerald Everett had 100 yards and a touchdown a week earlier, so Travis Kelce was going to get his. So I thought they had a decent plan for him. I thought they kind of limited explosives. I mean, their plan overall, that first drive, they were getting good pressure on him. There were several times when I thought they had Mahomes down, and he just made a Mahomes play. So It was a kind of defensive effort that I kind of just scratched, to Mahomes. It was Mahomes, and Kelce was Kelce. And the Jaguars in their current form don't have the horses to kind of, roll against that.
Right. I also think Andy Reid is not underrated necessarily, but underappreciated right now during the stretch the Chiefs have had. Just because, obviously Patrick Mahomes is getting his flowers for being the MVP front runner. as he should be, and he should be on SportsCenter more often because he like the jumping out of the pocket play was like every single time I watch him play, it's like he makes the most crazy throw I've ever seen in my life. But and then like Travis Kelce obviously went off as we all knew he would, but like my point is a big part of that is Andy Reid just like even if other teams have done it all year, but like just exploiting mismatches against the Jaguars and like when obviously like Chad Henne wasn't the driving factor behind the 98-yard drive, the run game is kind of like taking a lot of steps. Reid gets a lot of credit too. This is just my point. Post Hill, including the
absolutely. I mean, just watching the Chiefs' offense, I mean, all like the eye candy Andy Reid throws at you, before a play, especially a defense like the Jaguars, who they like to blitz, so they, as a result, have to play a lot of man coverage at times. Like I was getting tired watching them follow the motion guys sometimes. It's like Kadarius Toney was, giving Rayshon Jenkins and Trey Herndon like just an entire, week's worth of, the conditioning out there. Like he throws a lot at you. And one note I will say, I recommend anybody who ever goes to a Chiefs game live, the Chiefs and Jaguars, they play next year. Anybody, when you get there early and you're watching the quarterbacks warm up, watch Patrick Mahomes warm up because it is the most ridiculous thing ever. He's like rolling like he's out of a pocket, like doing like an unscripted play and like just throwing completely off balance and off platform, super casually. 60-yard, 70-yard passes, and it looks like it's like the most boring thing ever to him, and he's just doing it to like get the juices flowing. And I'm watching it before the game, and I'm like, Jesus, this dude is he's something else. So it's just, I mean, everybody knew, when the Jags drew the Chiefs that it was going to be tough because I mean it's the Chiefs, it's Patrick freaking Mahomes, man.
Yeah, I mean the Chiefs are a powerhouse by themselves. They're like Mahomes is the best quarterback ever, but they were also a playoff team before he got there, so they're the Chiefs. They're good.
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it, Gus. Did you not like my I'll say it right now. I'll say it for the pod. Patrick Mahomes is, in my opinion, through 5 years, the best. I think he's already the most talented quarterback ever. And in 15 years, I'm going to make sure I come back to that tweet and respond to every single person. And I will wait 15 years. I already have it marked. Like that's a more important event to me than most other things happening in 15 years. That's probably up there number 2 for me. I'm pretty sure I'll have a wedding anniversary around that time. But this falls right in after that. He's going to be the best ever.
Yeah.
I mean,
he
5
already
AFC
is.
champions. Exactly. 5 AFC championships.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. In 5 years as a starter. I mean, I just hope he doesn't keep getting injured because as much as it was like, oh, the Jaguars have a chance now. Once he kind of went down, it was like, man, it always sucks watching good player. I mean, any player obviously, but especially the fun ones go down. And if he's hobbled against the Bengals,
So the best tweet I saw during the game was friend of the podcast, Pino Jack, one of the most, incredible and deranged tweeters out there, said that he was like, "Oh no, I don't like the idea of losing to Henne. Patrick, please be okay." That sums it up perfectly.
Right.
You would rather play Patrick Mahomes and Chad Henne just for the idea of losing to Chad
Henne. Other side of the ball, was there I feel like one of the biggest reactions for the other side of the ball was Travis Kelce just kind of had a day, and Patrick Mahomes was Patrick Mahomes, so it made sense. But then for the Jaguars offense, it felt a little bit one-dimensional at times. Do you think that was what do you think the reason was, and do you think it was necessary?
I really don't know what the reason was. I thought coming into the game that they were going to make kind of an emphasis to run the ball, and I know in Week 10 they really struggled running the ball against the Chiefs, or maybe that's just I remember us talking about this last time when we looked it up, and they averaged 4-something yards per carry. But I remember they had a couple tackles for loss, so maybe Doug, he kind of just stuck to his guns, and he's like, I'm going to do what got us here, which is airing it out, even if it's a horizontal passing game, which for better or worse, their passing game this year is more of a horizontal passing game regardless than anything. So it kind of felt like he was just. Then they ran, at one of the highest clips of screen passes, of any team this year. So they kind of just felt like they were doing, riding the horse that got them there. but 10 carries to Travis Etienne shouldn't have happened because, I mean, when you rewatch the game, I mean, he was playing well. That touchdown he had, that was pretty much completely him. He was able to break the tackle, keep his balance, and score from 4 yards out. He had that really big run on
the third
a few
one.
plays. Yeah, a few plays before Kirk's touchdown. That was, again, just him. Like, he should have got more carries. I'm not going to say more touches because I firmly believe that I would rather, if you're a coach, you would rather throw the ball to Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, and Travis Etienne. But he should have got more carries because it feels like that would have taken a lot off of the offensive shoulders in the second half because that's what lost them the game. They just could not get anything going. And, the third quarter, and it was a little too late for the offense. I mean, the Jaguars, they forced the Chiefs to punt on their first 2 drives of the second half, I want to say. So, yeah. I mean, the chances were there, and the Jaguars, they just, they kind of stalled over and over. And I do think not letting, Travis Etienne be that guy is a reason why.
Yeah, I kind of expected them to go with the quick game a lot in the beginning of the game, just because, as you've said, that's kind of been their best offensive plan throughout the whole season. And also just to kind of like the whole playoff mantra of offensive game planning to make DBs tackle and just kind of like playoff football. So, but then like the fact that it never really felt like they got away from that. And like there was a couple cool things that they did to like, I don't know, a couple adjustments that they made, but it just like did not feel like enough at all. So, and like, I mean, the offensive line was like what I thought might have been like one factor of like why they were doing what they were doing, because like Lawrence felt like he was under pressure so much in the first half whenever he did drop back, and like the interior was just getting crushed.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. What people pointed out as the weak part of the Jaguars' offensive line, left guard and center coming into the game. I mean, that's what was exploited. I remember, one of the sacks they gave up, they attempted to go for a deep shot off of play action. And, kind of similar to the play that Kirk dropped on. He ran like a deep crosser, a deep post, and Fortner just got, completely blew up from the go that Lawrence wasn't even able to hit his drop before he got sacked. And one of the Ingram screens, I think Fortner, missed the block onto. It was just a rough game for Fortner, but I think we all kind of expected it to be. I mean, Chris Jones, for my money, was the best interior lineman in football this year. I think, him or Nick Bosa should be defensive player of the year. So we obviously expected that. We expected Chris Jones to have his wins against Tyler Shatley. It just felt like, the Jaguars probably should have expected that. Maybe they did expect that, and they didn't do enough to kind of compensate for it. But it was just one of those games where I felt like, particularly in the trenches, again, the Jaguars, year one of this build, don't yet have the horses for it. Like Luke Fortner, maybe in another year or two, he'll fare better in games like this. Maybe in a year or two, Ben Barch or somebody else will be at left guard, and, they'll fare well against a guy like Chris Jones. But it's just where they're at right now. It just, it wasn't a matchup that they were going to win. I thought Sheriff had a solid game. And Doug mentioned after the game that a lot of the issues were communication issues between the line and the running back. So like that one play where Saunders hit Trevor, I feel like that was, a good example. It just seemed like, whether it's because of the stadium,
unblocked.
Yeah. It felt like they were missing protections, and it was something that they didn't like. Something they didn't have an issue with all year. It felt like they were a very technically sound unit above all else, and then everything just kind of fell apart this weekend. I'll say it would have been a good weekend to have a pass blocker like James Robinson, but nonetheless, we march forth.
We go forth. Do you have any other general takeaways from the game before we kind of move on?
I thought again, that personally, I want to get your take on this. If Jamal Agnew doesn't fumble that ball, do the Jaguars win the game? And I'm not saying, they score a touchdown on that play if he doesn't fumble it. Like, obviously, you have to factor in, do they end up scoring? So if Jamal Agnew doesn't fumble that ball, he gets tackled instead of fumbling it. Do they win the game, in your opinion?
I don't think so. I wasn't really feeling like, obviously, I was excited about the comeback as it was happening. But, like, even if they score a touchdown, I was still like, I don't know. Like, I mean, Reed, as we've said before, is like kind of infamous for his late game management, so maybe he would have botched it. But at the same time, like, I feel confident in him as a play caller to just get, like, I feel like they would have needed 3 to 6 plays, and that's about it.
I want to point out that we were right about Reed being completely weird in big games. That challenge he had was like challenging, like whether it was like an inch or something. It was the most neurotic, like tiny picture thing in a big moment that if the Jaguars had won that game, people would have, chalked it up to, classic Andy Reid, playoff moment. Because I mean, at the time, I was like, dude, what is going on here, Andy?
Yeah. It didn't look. Was that on the Henny drive, or maybe it was a drive?
No, it was in the second half. It was in the second half. Yeah. It was definitely. I'm trying to remember if it was on the drive where they had the 3rd and 1, and Kelsey had like the worst. What's it called? One of the worst ever QB sneaks, tight end sneaks, whatever you want to call it. Okay, here it was in like the middle of the third quarter. Mahomes threw it to Pacheco on 2nd and 7, and they ruled it. Pacheco. Shut up. One of us is doing research here, and the other one is.
I'm just helping you out because I've done my research.
You're over here sitting in your Andrew Garfield, bohemian, devil may care mindset, and I'm over. Yeah, exactly. I watched TikTok. Boom, whatever today. It was fantastic. But nonetheless,
I'm not on TikTok.
It's an Andrew Garfield movie. But nonetheless, it was like a 2nd and 7 pass that got 6 yards. And so it was like 3rd and 1 or first down, and Reed challenged it. It was just like, dude, what's the point? And yeah, they didn't get it. Yeah, that was the play. Noah Gray went up the middle the very next play with Travis Kelce pushing him. I don't know what it was the masterclass in Andy Reid, and if the Jaguars had won that game, it would have been something that had been remembered. But I mean, here, just looking at their second half, drives, they went punt, touchdown, fumble, interception, field goal. So 2 punts to open the drive, and your touchdown doesn't come until the start or basically the start of the fourth quarter. So that's just not going to win you a game.
Right. I think it's just because the Jaguars made it a 1-possession game. Like, they scored a touchdown, and then the Chiefs scored a touchdown right after them in the second half, I feel like. So then it was, at the end of the game, I was like, all right, if the Jags score a touchdown, like, we've seen the Chiefs, like, be able to, like, keep a lead, I guess.
That's fair. I feel like the Jaguars, they were finding enough answers for the Chiefs in the second half. Like, because obviously, they scored that touchdown, but the Chiefs' second half, they went punt, field goal, touchdown, punt. So, I mean, the Jaguars, they had a better second half against the Chiefs, at least in my opinion, than they had the first half, because, I mean, the Chiefs, they scored 2 different touchdown drives in the first half. So, it was, it kind of summed up the year, kind of what could have been, because there are a lot of games that you're like, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Like there's 1 to 2 to 3 plays that changed pretty much all of their losses outside of a couple. And it's a cliche to say that there are 4 to 5 plays a game that impact and really decide a football game, but I'm a firm believer in it, and I think this Jaguars team kind of showed it.
100%. 100%. It's always a couple swings, and like it's frustrating too because it's the same thing that happened in the regular season game against the Chiefs, saying the same thing.
It felt like the same exact game.
It's the same thing with Chris Jones, just like being dominant and like everybody expecting it. Yeah.
What are you gonna do about it?
What are you gonna do? So
what you gonna do? I can't have I don't have a Jersey accent at all. I will say my final takeaways for Kansas City. Arthur Bryant's terrific barbecue. Kitchen staff was yelling at each other. Best ribs I ever had. Recommend it. 15 out of 10. Great barbecue. Kansas City, really cool city to check out. I thought Arrowhead was Arrowhead a playoff experience was to me like the best football experience I've covered in a game, and I'd probably put the Jags Titans, Jags Chargers up there. UCF and the Peach Bowl against Auburn's up there, but I mean Arrowhead was just crazy. So I recommend a trip to Arrowhead. If the Jaguars next time they play the Chiefs, anybody who wants to see just a really cool stadium, go to Arrowhead. But their scoreboards suck. Their scoreboards they make me appreciate. Dude, the scoreboards are terrible. They make me appreciate the Jaguar scoreboard. It's like from the press box, it's like the size of a microwave, and it barely you can barely see the score or anything. Like their scoreboards are completely useless. I know they want to go with the old timey nostalgia feel, but Shad Khan had the right idea about scoreboards because Arrowhead Stadium, elite stadium, great people, worst scoreboards in the NFL.
You do any tailgating before the game?
I walked through a tailgate.
You watched through the tailgate.
Like I walked through basically what like my parking pass was. It was like a 15-minute walk, like from like the media entrance, and you have to like walk through like a tunnel, and then a sea of tailgaters. And dude, I saw like school buses and vans like completely renovated. Like I saw one school bus that was renovated to where they painted the front of it to look like Andy Reid's face. it was.
Did it have a massive mustache across the front?
Yeah, it did. It was called Big Red. I kept it moving. I didn't want to stop and take a picture. I was in enemy territory. I kept it moving, but no, it was. And then when you get inside, like from the press box, there's like all glass windows around. You can see like all the parking. Basically, it's like in the Jaguars press box, you can basically only see the field. And the Chiefs, you can see like behind the stadium.
Yeah.
And it was literally just miles and miles and miles of people. Like it was insane. It was a cool experience.
That's the same thing at the Gator Stadium. That's a sneaky, like, good point of view in Gainesville. Just go up to the Gators press box.
The difference here,
you mentioned UCF earlier. I can't mention Florida.
Few differences between this game and a game at the Gator Stadium. This was an important game being played. It was a postseason game being played. A quarterback on each team threw a touchdown, and there were respected head coaches and fan bases. Other than that, it was just like a game.
That's it, though. The list doesn't keep going. I thought you had like three.
The list can keep going. The Billy Napier lost 2 recruits during the game. The list can keep going, buddy. Mm. I kid. I did mention UCF. Hey. They're going absolutely nowhere in the Big 12 under Gus Malzahn, and you can't tell me nothing. Just happy to be here, baby. That's the UCF degree. It's actually on my degree. Just happy to be here.
That's what it says. It's printed out.
Yeah, it really does.
Do you know, is the Kansas City game next year in KC or is it in Jax? I think
it's in Jax.
Or if they played in Jacksonville this year, I guess it would make sense if they played the regular season.
I'm pretty sure it is in Jacksonville. I would be willing to bet the mortgage. Yeah, it is. Yeah, next year. They got obviously the divisional teams at home. Then they have the Chiefs, the 49ers, the Panthers, Bengals, Falcons, and Ravens. they got some tough some tough home games, man.
Yeah, Mahomes and Burrow both being at home is pretty cool, though. I'm gonna have to try to make it out there for the Steph Curry pregame impersonations.
But their road games are pretty easy. They play Cleveland, the Saints, Buccaneers, Steelers, and the Bills Mafia, the most irrelevant playoff franchise of the last 5 to 6 decades.
Gosh. Like, it feels like it's been so long now that they've been playoff or Super Bowl contenders, quote unquote, legitimate, real Super Bowl contenders, and they just like haven't really done anything.
They haven't gone out this bad since they took over in Orange Park TGIF Fridays.
Was that recently? Because they went out pretty bad last playoffs.
Yeah, that was they came like the year that the Jaguars hosted them in the wild card. It was like the year like they went like 8-8 or 7-9 or something. Like they sucked. Tyrod. Yeah, and they got in because the Ravens lost in Week 17 to the Bengals.
Yeah, that's right.
And like it was like the Bills' first game and like playoff game in like 20 years, and they talked nonstop about how they were going to take over Jacksonville, and they took over basically the equivalent of Buffalo Wild Wings and in downtown Jacksonville. That's about it.
Yeah, I remember people getting nervous because there was like a couple of flights full of Bills fans, obviously, and then they got there, or some of them got there early, so there was some royal and red. But yeah, it was
to see your team taking that flight to see your team lose to not only to lose to Blake Bortles in the playoffs, but to not score a touchdown.
Was it 10-6 or 10-3?
I think it was 10-6. I think it was 10-6 They didn't score a touchdown. It was 10-3. It was 10-3.
10-3.
Well, somebody has to be.
Well, now I'm the graphics / video / producer guy.
Now, yeah. You make it sound like you just got that responsibility after I showed a complete incapability to do it. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, no, Anyways,
yeah.
So talking about the 4 playoff teams, not just the Bengals and Chiefs, but kind of like the topic here is lessons to be learned from just how those teams are constructed. I mean, in terms of roster construction, in terms of schemes they kind of like favor in or major in. What's one takeaway I guess you have from just
I mean the trenches. Teams? The trenches, honestly, dude. I mean the Bengals. I know that their offensive line is what it is, but I mean they took a roll of the dice on Trey Hendrickson, who I personally did not think was that appealing for free agent. He's been, one of the best pass rushers in the league, the last 2 seasons. And they also have, a DJ Reader. I mean, they completely dominated the Bills up front, defensively. The Chiefs have obviously invested in their offensive line and defensive line. I mean, Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith. Yeah, that's a great trio. Orlando Brown stinks, but outside of that, their offensive line, has some dudes on. Their defensive line, Chris Jones, Frank Clark, the Greek god George, whose last name I'm not even gonna attempt to say. Carl Aftis. I felt so bad for him when he covered Kirk on that play. that was cruel.
Yeah,
that was cruel. And then obviously for the 49ers, I mean their defense is built on the trenches and just having those dudes up front. And the Eagles, obviously, they have. I saw a tweet during the game against the Giants where it was like second rounder Landon Dickerson is hurt. First rounder Andre Dillard is filling in for him. And I'm like, that just that like sums up like the Eagles and how they're built. They're built up front. They've paid less attention to positions like linebacker, which obviously the Jaguars have not gone the same way of, and safety. But they've loaded in on the defensive and offensive lines, and they've loaded in on skill players.
Right. I mean, I think you can say the same thing about the other teams too. Like the Chiefs are pretty dominant on both lines, like for offense as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought that the Chiefs line held up really well against the Jaguars pass rush. After the first drive, I thought the Chiefs line, played well. I thought Orlando Brown had a bad game, but otherwise, I thought the Chiefs interior did well against the Jaguars front. It was one of the differences. So, yeah, you got to invest in both lines, in my opinion, to win at this point in the season. And the Jaguars, they kind of saw it. They had, they obviously invested in their offensive line, but you had a young guy at center, a young guy at left tackle, and a backup at left guard, and we kind of saw what happened.
Yes, we did. I would say the biggest or just a takeaway for me is the importance of scheme adaptability, because there's so many different types of teams and they're also talented, but with the Niners you have Kyle Shanahan scheming up incredible skill players in a or in a wide zone scheme. You got heavy RPO and quarterback run scheme for the Eagles, but they can also throw it deep with great weapons, great skill players again. And then the Chiefs and the Bengals have just probably the 2 best quarterbacks in the league right now. I feel like Burrow's kind of ascended to, now that Herbert and Allen are on some recency bias here, but in the past month they've kind of been lowered. Yeah, Burrow's making his way up there. I feel like he's kind of secured the number 2 spot. So you got to be able to game plan against elite defenses or elite quarterbacks, but as well as elite scheming too. And so rather than being pigeonholed into we're a West Coast offense that does quick game, or we're a Tampa 2 defense that's a 3-4. I think for this offseason, looking ahead for the Jaguars, kind of not trying not to pigeonhole. At the end of the game, passing offense and then being able to tackle and play man coverage on defense is usually what wins because of the great quarterbacks. But I mean, the schemes just changed so much from going to 1 high to 2 high back and forth, favoring running and passing. Gotta be ready for anything.
I want to cry. I feel like how my dad would have felt if I was ever good at a sport and watched me succeed. You saying Herbert's kind of, I put Herbert in tier 3. I think Mahomes in his own tier, and then Burrow in front of Allen in tier 2, and then you can put Herbert in tier 3 with Lawrence, Lamar, whatever. Herbert not top 3 to me.
What's it take? You
I'm
think
proud.
he's like maybe he has such a low ADOT partly because of the offense, partly because of slow receivers, but also because he's just scared, so he gets through the progressions quickly.
Play out of structure more. Fine by.
Yeah, he's a robot. You gotta.
He is. He is.
Bit, I guess.
Yeah, he is. I mean, it's not anything specific. Honestly, I just feel like the probably overall like consistency game to game. Like he's a guy who like he has insane highs, and then he'll also kind of go through more lulls. I feel like than some of the other guys.
Would you say there's like in terms of roster building for ahead for the Jaguars, like in terms of like corners who can play man or like I don't know guys who can like stop the run because of like the division that the Jaguars are in, like importance to lean anyway because like it's hard to like actually be adaptable. It's easier to kind of like, find players to fit your scheme. It's the easy way out.
Yeah, and then I think, like you said, it's important to have a coach who's adaptable, and I think the Jaguars, like this playoff has kind of made me think, like like you said, like not saying your head coach has to be like an offensive play call or whatever, because I think the same thing could be, go for like a defensive guy. Like the 49ers are super adaptable in defense, so I could go for D'Amico Ryans, but like to me, I think the playoffs is when the value comes in having a guy like Doug Peterson over a guy like Sean McDermott, because both can obviously lead a team, but in the playoffs, like you said, it kind of comes down to a schematic edge. And I'll take a guy like Doug who's innovative and adaptive over a guy like McDermott whose edge is kind of like as a leader, kind of instilling a culture and whatnot. So I do think the Jaguars have to find certain players. It's hard for me because I think they still have to identify what should be the plan, like their identity moving forward. Like, okay, do we want to be a 3-4? Do we want to be a 4-3? Like, what do we want out of our defense? Because we saw their defense kind of change shape throughout, the season. Mm-hmm. I mean, we saw them play a completely different style at times over the second half of the season. So I think first you have to find out like who you want to be and then basically attack it like that. But I think they're still going to have, some of the same emphases, guys who, score out really well athletically. Up front, I think they're going to want guys who are long. I don't think that matters as much to them in the back seven because Chad Muma has, he's like me. I got dinosaur arms, Chad, I do too, bro. I got T-Rex arms. I played guard or center for my entire, junior high and high school football career. And I remember one time in the spring game they put me at right tackle, and I remember even just lining up in my head before the ball snapped. I'm like, this might not go very well. And then I get into my kick stance, and my arms are so short I couldn't reach the guy. He just ran by me, and I'm like, no, like this isn't going to work. So other than him, and and like Darius Williams is a smaller guy. They've kind of gone in on kind of the athletic prototype when it comes to defenders. But I don't know. Like I said, I feel like they need to kind of figure out who they want to be first.
That's definitely true. At least you got some playing time. I was a quarterback and I had the hip fluidity of like the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz.
Gus,
didn't even see the field. Small and slow.
I'm kicking off my spring, youth football coaching season in like a week, mm-hmm. And I just want to let you know if I ever saw you on the field, me calling plays, I'm attacking you every single play, Gus. I'm coming at
Maybe
you.
One day.
I'm coming at you with everything. Crack toss, running back you, one-on-one in space. I'm getting you out of there, my friend.
Right now I'm continuing my football career by doing flag football instead. Because now I'm the quarterback instead of the corner.
Heck yeah. No, I was absolutely terrible. I was good for like the coaches would tell me like smart and like stuff like know the playbook, but it was literally like I could just remember the plays and that was about it. Like my athleticism below 0, my strength below 0, my grit 1. I didn't have that dog in me.
Oh man, well I'm really. It warms my heart that you were able to give yourself the 1 point for grit.
Hey, I wore arm pads. I had grit. I only did that because one game, like I went into a block and a guy's like face mask hit me here, and it was bruised in school, and I'm like, this isn't even a cool injury to tell people about. Like,
the one injury I had in high school that was super cool was I took my dog for a bike ride, and she saw a squirrel, so I fell off and fractured my elbow. So
I had a good one. My last year playing, I was like, so we had a pool in the backyard. And it was like, like a concrete pool deck and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like a section on the pool deck where the filter is. So you have that little hole, like the lid that can come off.
Yeah.
And it was loose or something. I don't know. My dog's running around the pool. I'm trying to get her to go inside, so I'm chasing her. I step on it, fall in it completely.
John.
Yeah, and I broke my pinky toe and I hurt my leg, and I come to like weightlifting the next day with like the doctor's note. I'm like, hey, hurt pinky toe. And they're like, okay. It's like,
right.
It's a broken toe. What do you mean, okay?
What's a broken toe even like? Like, did you have to get a boot for it?
Nah, I didn't.
Just imagine you walking around with crutches through.
No, it was the pinky toe. I just slumped for a little bit.
All right, where were we?
Fun trip down memory lane.
All right. Any other like thoughts from the playoffs? I guess we can do some predictions. Who do you think is going to win each game?
Chiefs are going to beat the Bengals narrowly. It's going to come down to the last drive. 49ers are going to beat the Eagles, and then Chiefs over 49ers in the Super Bowl. Again.
Yeah. That was my original pick, but I'm going to switch it up completely because, like, I like Brock Purdy playing in Philly. Like, eventually he's going to throw a pick. Eventually, like,
I hope so.
Catch it. Like Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl just doesn't make sense to me. But at the same time, like, it would be pretty sweet for Kyle Shanahan's sake, for like his legacy to take Mr. Irrelevant to the Super Bowl is pretty cool. So I wouldn't mind it, but I don't know. Jalen Hurts kind of deserves to see a Super Bowl more, so I guess I'm kind of pulling for the Birds.
I don't want to do any of the Brock Purdy discourse if he wins the Super Bowl, dude. I don't want to do any of it. I want no parts in the Brock Purdy winning a Super Bowl, but I do think the Eagles, the 49ers kind of out-schemed the Eagles. Jalen Hurts runs into some trouble this weekend.
I can see that.
Maybe the Eagles roll over them, though, man. I mean, it's, the two best rosters in the NFC, so I don't know.
It's going to be a fun weekend. It's like the two best rosters versus the two best quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good time.
Do you think – how many off seasons do you think the Jaguars are from being able to consistently be in the conversation with one of these four teams? Because these four teams aren't going anywhere anytime soon. The Eagles are going to be good for a while. The Bengals and Chiefs are going to be good for a while. The 49ers are good with Brock Purdy, so I'm just going to assume that they're going to be good most years.
I don't know. Eagles, like, I like Jalen Hurts a lot, but, like, it feels like they, like, went all in a little bit, so, like, I don't think they're going to, like, crash and burn or anything like that and be, like, not good for a while. I don't know if they deserve to be on the same pedestal. But to answer your question, two good off seasons, two good drafts mostly, because, like, once you have the drafts to kind of fill out the roster and hopefully draft an all-pro guy or three, fingers crossed, then you can, like, then people will be able to, or veterans will want to come to Jacksonville and sign for less. It's pretty simple. And, like, I don't know. It kind of has to be in two because of, like, the value of Trevor's rookie contract, I think. Because, like, if you don't even, like, sniff a Super Bowl before he signs, like, his gigantic extension, then, like, I thought that's not really a great look.
They did sniff a Super Bowl.
All right, they gotta take a big whiff.
They got a whiff.
They gotta get right up to the pie and get their nose all over it. Really take it in. Not just a little, oh, I got it, yeah.
See, go to
because now it's visual, so I have to visualize it. Now it's
fair enough. I mean, yeah, I'd agree with that. I think they could. If you have a good draft next year, and like the biggest thing for the Jaguars now is having young guys develop. Like they need, like, what's the biggest thing the Jaguars need entering 2023? They need Trayvon Walker to take a next step. They need Trevor Lawrence to take a next step. They need Devin Lloyd to take
Yeah, that's a big one.
A couple of steps,
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing for them. I think it's not like acquiring new pieces because they're obviously going to do that. They're going to, they're going to add a first and second round pick, to this offense, this team, and along with I think they have 9 picks right now, and like 3 fourth rounders or something. So they're going to add pieces, and obviously Calvin Ridley is going to be a big piece, but the biggest thing I think for them right now is just how much more can they help Trayvon Walker, Devin Lloyd, Luke Fortner, Chad Muma. How much more can they help them improve?
All right, here's a question for you. If you could add one superstar to the roster, just one for offense and defense, who would it be? Like a superstar, like safety, just like big position, not a specific player.
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, elite slot guy, completely unhinged, would fit, Jacksonville perfectly. He loves posting, so he's ideal. And
I know those are your favorite players. You just like the guys who are online as much as you are.
Dude, Eli Apple, he's on a heater right now, dog.
Oh man, I forgot about him. And then just every playoffs, he turns into Pat Beverly.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
He's on a heater. And then offense, I'm sorry, DeAndre Hopkins, dude, his skill set's literally perfect for Trevor Lawrence. There's not – I don't know if there's ever been a receiver in the NFL who fits Trevor Lawrence more than, DeAndre Hopkins. That just, throw it up and get it, kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you on defense or just a slot or middle of the field coverage guy. Like a Tyrann Mathieu from 5 years ago was kind of my thought. I wasn't thinking
Fred Warner.
Actual free agent or actual available players.
Fred Warner would be sick.
Yeah, that would be cool. But then on offense, I think a tight end who's a difference maker would make as much of a difference for Doug's play calling ability and the offensive ceiling as a nuke would. As much as I've been saying for years now that the Jags gotta get next to help out the receiver because that's or help out their quarterback because that's the best way that they can. I think a great tight end honestly might be the best way to help out with Trevor and Doug and the team overall. So I kind of do you have any? Go ahead.
No, can I just make my smart ass comment?
Yeah, I knew you were sitting on one.
There's naturally a lot of special tight ends out there. There's the NFL's overflowing with them. Come on, give me a name. There's two of them. Give me a name.
Michael Mayer or Darnell Washington.
Darnell Washington, I think, would be a really interesting pick because you could like Chris Manhertz played 38% of snaps, and you obviously want a first rounder to play more. And he could be like Chris Manhertz, so you can actually throw the ball too. So naturally, he could play more. I think he'd be really interesting because he's that, massive length guy, dominates in the trenches, would be good for AFC South. I need to watch more Mayer. I struggle to like that kind of tight end in the first round. My comp for him is Hawkinson, and TJ Hawkinson's been a great player, but if a draft was today and I knew exactly what Hawkinson produced in the NFL, I still wouldn't take him top 10. What defensive coordinator in the NFL is ever scared of TJ Hawkinson? Nobody played the Vikings this year.
Packers defensive coordinator, maybe?
No. He happens to have good games, but there's nobody scared of TJ Hawkinson. Yeah. And I don't know if there's anybody going to be scared of Michael Mayer.
That's probably fair.
That's my ignorant take.
I think you and I definitely both think Ingram is going to be extended, and so for that reason, as you said, first round tight end with Ingram wouldn't play a lot, so it wouldn't really make a lot of sense.
The Jags traded.
I was just saying, in theory, a great tight end 1-2 punch for Doug, without actually saying any names. So you would.
No, I agree with that. I think the big thing for people when you talk about the value of the tight end in the first round, with Ingram involved, because it's going to come up. Because I agree with you. I think having a second tight end would be awesome. Because it was just clear Doug didn't see Darren Arnold as that guy, and Manhertz obviously wasn't that guy as a pass catcher. My response to people who would say there's no value in taking a tight end there, because I generally agree, but they traded up to take an off-ball linebacker in the first round last year after paying one. You know, and they paid an off-ball linebacker. They paid a right guard. Balky's drafted a running back in the first round. I'm not sure this is the team that really care about, positional value. It seems like they're more player over positional value, which is where I stand on the Jalen Carter argument on Twitter. So I stand with them. I stand with Trent.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely be like a best player available kind of pick. And so it'll be interesting to see just how the board shakes out, as Trent says, and like whether a tight end falls and like maybe that is the best guy. But like, I mean, you and I both posted mock drafts online this week and both had a second round tight end. So I think it would be a surprise for them not to leave the draft without taking one.
And like, even if you bring Ingram back, like you still like if you re-sign Ingram, you only have 2 tight ends on the contract. Like,
yeah,
and you need cap-friendly pass catchers on this team. That's one thing they're missing. Because all the pass catchers, Ridley, Zay Jones, Kirk, Ingram. I mean, they're all getting paid money. I mean, eventually you need somebody who can catch passes and not, take a big chunk of cap space. But no, I'm definitely with it. What was that thing that Trent used to say? I think it was when Urban was there, that the Urban draft that you and I used to geek at. It was like you got to listen to you got to hear the board.
Listen to the board or something like that. And like for some reason in like those videos, he sounded like Batman. I feel like whenever you hear him now, I don't know. I didn't actually listen to the presser. Did he still sound the same way, like he was talking to Dane?
Sounds like an AFC South champion. That's what it sounds like. Sounds like you need to put some respect on his name.
Talking about putting respect on names. In other news, Doug Peterson was officially named or listed or whatever as a finalist for 2022 Coach of the Year. Would you say? I mean, we've kind of given him his flowers today and in the past, but who would you give the award to?
I'd give it to him. Shanahan obviously making it this far with, Brock Purdy is enough reason to, be nominated, obviously. But I think, everybody's kind of understood, throughout that, the 49ers have a kick-ass, roster.
Mm-hmm.
Dabble, I mean, they finished with 8 wins, and what was their like preseason prediction in Vegas? It was like 6.5 wins, 7 wins, like it was up there. So I mean, like, then they, to me, they were a fine team, but I thought they took advantage more of a weak NFC than the Jaguars did a weak AFC South. So I'd give it to Doug personally. I thought he did the best coaching job. Taking over for Urban Meyer is different than taking over for Joe Judge, in my opinion. And I think overall, just what Doug did in Jacksonville and what he did with Trevor, I think, and the fashion that they did it. Like they had a top 10 offense with an offense that people were like openly laughing, at the additions that they made. And Doug, kind of said, screw it, and turned them into one of the most productive offenses in franchise history.
Yeah, let him cook. I would say kind of like the big argument, or the one argument for me would just be like he did the most with the least, because like Shanahan, as you said, taking Purdy to the conference championship is incredible, but the Niners and the Eagles, because I think Sirianni is currently like the favorite to win. The Niners and Eagles, like, were both
he's
like the 2 Super Bowl favorites before the season that like who didn't have a superstar quarterback, I feel like, and they have the 2 best rosters in the league.
Sirianni's not a finalist.
Really?
Yeah, it's Dabble, Peterson, and Shanahan.
I'm pretty sure he is. Do some more research, numbers guy.
I want to say.
I was on the NFL.com website earlier today, and I wrote down Dable, McDermott, Shanahan, Sirianni, Peterson.
No, the AP came out with the actual finalist, and Sirianni wasn't. He wasn't a part of the finalists.
So
I will say,
when he said that Sirianni was the favorite, he's got Peterson.
Who was?
So he was pissed. What were you saying?
Who was it that named Doug like Coach of the Year the other day? It was like NFL 101 or Football 101 or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like it was something I never heard of.
I've never heard of that in my life.
I was like, I mean, that's cool. And like, I guess it brings up a good point that Doug is easily the AFC Coach of the Year, because all the other really contenders, because like it's not McDermott, I would say. But like the other real contenders were on the NFC. So AFC Coach of the Year officially, but via us and a website/organization that we don't know the name of.
And to think this podcast And to think this podcast stumped for Byron Leftwich. No, I did. I did it. Put me in the gallows. I'm guilty. I thought Byron Leftwich should be a good hire. I liked Peterson. I think I had a tweet where I said Peterson was a pumpkin or whatever, and then I remember at first thinking he was a bad candidate, and then during the process, it was before the Byron stuff. It was it was just during the time I had COVID. So it was right near the end of the season. I did more, diving into his resume, and I came around to him. He was I want to say my third or second guy, but I wanted Leftwich, and he got fired. So for the first time in my life, I was wrong. So my detractors.
The first time, John?
Yeah, first time.
I was definitely also swept up in the whole Byron into Jacksonville thing, and kind of taking a step back from the coaching hire. I feel like you and I and a lot of other people might have been scared off of Peterson and not realized oh duh, he led Carson Wentz to an MVP season and Nick Foles to a Super Bowl, just because of the way things ended in Philly. It was is he the problem, or was it ownership and the GM? Since there was uncertainty around it, or at least in the public and in my eyes, that made it a sketchier hire than Jacksonville's former starting quarterback.
And it's not like he was a highly sought after guy. He interviewed the Jaguars, he interviewed the Saints. I think he interviewed with the Vikings, and I think that's it. In the 2 years that he was, on the open market. So it's not like the NFL was exactly jockeying to get him, which, it kind of shows, sometimes it's better to get the guy who's proven he can do it rather than get the, new shiny toy. Because, if you look at that Eagles roster from 2017 and compare it to the Eagles roster today, it's night and day. Roster was not very good. It wasn't.
Well, apparently if Peterson wins a Super Bowl with the Jaguars, knock on wood, but eventually he would be the first head coach ever to win with two different franchises. And maybe coaching rankings could be a topic for the offseason, but it would be hard to say he's not a top 10 coach after just one season in Jacksonville. He's bad.
Yeah, and then when's the last time the Jaguars haven't been able to say that since the Tom Coughlin era, and I have no context for that because I was a young child during then. So I have no idea where Tom ranked, but during their success, nobody thought Jack Del Rio was a top 8 coach in the NFL or anything like that. And then Doug Marrone, was I'll say the difference between Doug Marrone and Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson is an alpha, and Doug Marrone was a beta.
Oh, Doug's a nice guy.
He was a nice guy, but
I don't want to speak poorly on him.
No, I'm not trying to speak poorly on him, but Doug Peterson, in my opinion, has the personality where he could have navigated the 2017, 2018 Jaguars locker rooms. Doug Marrone, I do not think, has that kind of gravity to him to where he can command that kind of respect.
Yeah, I think it's a good take. The fact that Peterson has the culture and the play calling is pretty.
He's an alpha.
Pretty rare. Yeah,
he's an alpha.
Other coaching news is the receiver coach for the Jaguars, Chris Jackson, is taking a job at Texas, which, okay, sure.
He got a promotion.
Oh, really? I just saw that he was added to the staff. What's his new position?
He's receivers coach / passing game coordinator. So I'm honestly, Texas college athletics. I would imagine he's probably making more than he made the Jaguars.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, are there any? You wrote an article this week about kind of 3 names that stood out. Do you want to hit on those briefly as who could replace him as receivers coach for the?
Yeah, no, there was definitely some solid reactions to those. Those are 3 names because I just think the interesting thing is with Doug and his coaching staff is he can never keep a receivers coach on staff. He's never had a receivers coach for 2 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, he's been coaching 6 or 6 as a head coach.
Yeah, and different guy every time. And I when I was researching guys with ties to him, there was one guy who was a receivers coach with him for 1 year. I can't remember his name, but I looked him up, and one of the things in his bio is he's regarded as one of the best receivers coach in football because of his work with etc. And then the next hyperlink is let go from Eagles due to their issues substituting receivers. He's he's picked some characters. But yeah, okay, the three guys I had, it was all right, Matthew Harper. He's the assistant special teams coach at the 49ers currently. He had the same role with the Eagles under Chip Kelly in the first 3 years of Doug's tenure. He was a wide receivers coach in 2019, assistant receivers coach in 2020. So he's somebody Doug knows. Joe, I can't do it as a fan of Sopranos. I can't. Joe Dorazio?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah?
Just
okay, there we go. Hey,
Dorazio?
he has a title. He has a title you'll sure to love. He's the Columbia University running backs coach and offensive run game coordinator, which screams wide receivers coach. But he's worked with Andy Reid both, in Philadelphia, and he was like Andy Reid's like assistant to the head coach in Kansas City, and he was an assistant wide receivers coach in Doug's first year in Philly. So he has coached the position before, and then I think David Coley has to be like the first guy Doug calls, man. I mean, like 15 plus like years of experience at position. He's worked with Andy Reid forever. Like he's a guy who can be like an assistant head coach type guy, or even like a passing game coordinator guy. I know people hate on him because he had there was that 1 year with the Chiefs. I think it was 2014 where they didn't have a receiver catch a touchdown. I mean, Wash, Dwayne Bowie, and Albert Wilson were their top two receivers. And like Travis Kelce and Jamal Charles each had like 7 touchdown catches. So it was just like a nature of the offense. But I mean, Coley's resume as a receivers coach is probably like out of the available guys, like all the way up there. And he's been with Doug a ton. Like Doug played for the Eagles when Coley coached there. And then they coached together with the Eagles and they coached together with the Chiefs. So there are definitely a lot of ties there. So those are 3 names I think are worth watching. I have no source to report anything on any interest or anything, but those are 3 names that I think at least makes sense if you're just like connecting the dots name wise.
So you're saying Chad Ochocinco and Jimmy Smith weren't on your list?
No, love Jimmy, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I see it happening.
Yeah, none of the above for sure. Coley was the Texans head coach, right? Same guy.
Yeah, it's
another
easy
former
to forget.
Head coach on the roster.
Yeah, 2-0 against Urban Meyer.
True that.
He got the shaft by the Texans too, because like the Texans were better than they should have been, in 2021.
Definitely on a theme. I mean, same thing just happened to Levy. Josh McCown
but I mean,
inbound.
And on the bright side, though, the Jaguars, if they were going to lose a position coach, wide receivers coach is probably a position they can handle because Christian Kirk's a veteran, Zay Jones is a veteran, Calvin Ridley's a veteran, Jamal Agnew's a veteran. Like, there's not many guys that you need to like teach the position to,
Right. All right. I think the last piece of housekeeping is the exit interview this week from Trent Baalke. I was not there. John, were you there?
I was there.
John, do you have any takeaways?
I missed Doug's because I was driving back from Kansas City. Mm-hmm. I literally, I rolled into Jacksonville at like 7:30 a.m., picked up my dogs from where they were being boarded at because my fiance was also out of town while I was out of town, and did something at the house and then went straight to Trent. So I was like, it was like a 17-hour car drive, and I went straight to Trent Baalke. So I had it in me where I was just ready to get in there and get the heck out. But it was, I thought, an illuminating press conference. Like he said, forthright what, you and I have been saying for months now, what I've been reporting for months now is that the Jaguars, they're kind of shifting their mindset. Don't expect them to go out and spend big in free agency this year because now they're trying to become a draft and develop team, a team that retains their own guys, So that was the big thing. He said that there is mutual interest with Evan Ingram, which I thought was important, and that he hopes they don't, use the franchise tag. So I wouldn't imagine they're going to franchise tag Evan Ingram or Jawan Taylor. And then, overall, it seemed like that, what he was expecting out of the roster heading into next year is for kind of, outside of a few pieces here and there, for the offense, for the cast of characters to kind of remain the same. And like he said how important it was that Trevor would have mostly the same guys, and he even alluded to, he said there might be a new face here or there, but outside of Calvin Ridley, it's going to be like, the same backs, the same receivers, potentially the same tight ends with Evan Ingram coming back. So those are the big things, So it made me think, they're going to focus on defense in the draft. They want Evan Ingram back, and they're going to be a team that is really, kind of cautious in free agency right now because now they want to move into, what good teams do, which is, don't spend a ton of money in free agency.
They want to do what the good guys do. It makes sense. It's a good plan. It wasn't from the presser, but Arden Key apparently talked to media and said that he was interested in staying in Jacksonville, which is pretty cool to see because I think he would be like a huge re-addition to the defense as like a true pass rushing contributor. Someone that definitely brings a lot of spirit to the team as well in the locker room. And then Jawan Taylor is kind of the third big name for upcoming Jaguars free agents. And it feels like he's a little bit of the odd man out with Walker Little performing well in limited action both this year and last year when he played a little bit. And then Cam Robinson being on a big extension or big contract. You think Walker's gonna, or not Walker, Jawan's gonna get a bag elsewhere?
I do think he at least has to mark him. My expectation for like who they bring back, like I think they bring Ingram back. I think they bring Key back. I think they bring DeJuan Smoot back. Mm-hmm. Smoot, I think, is going to come relatively cheap because of his injury, obviously, but it makes sense for both sides. Like they both know each other, so it's kind of best outcome for an injured guy. And I think Jawan, like if I'm just thinking about it from the the business perspective, if I'm Jawan's representation, I have a 25-year-old client who has started 68 out of 68 games, plays a premium position. He was a second-round pick. He's coming off the best year of his career where he was, I'd say, like a top 6 to 8 right tackle this year.
Yeah,
I'm looking at what the Jaguars
top 10, like definitely top 10.
I'm looking at what the Jaguars paid Cam Robinson, and I'm asking, why aren't I getting that? And I don't think the Jaguars would give him a contract like that when you have a guy like Walker Little. So, like, it's unfortunate, in a perfect world, the Jaguars could have 3 NFL, starting caliber offensive tackles on their roster. But there's a reason it just doesn't happen very often.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, Cam and Jawan have both been on the roster so much that just, like, kind of came time for them to pay up or find someone to pay them. But it was, like, I think, like a underrated storyline from the past season for the Jaguars is how lucky they got with health because Smoot went down, but then Roy Robertson-Harris like really turned it up immediately after that. Cam Robinson went down, but Walker Little was right there to step up. And then same thing with Ben Barchu, was another offensive line starter who went down, but kind of had a guy ready to fill in. And so like I feel like those are the 3 main injuries and really the only injuries. And so I don't know. Keep having good health, I'd say, is a way to stay with these Final Four teams as we were talking about. Just be like the good teams and have good health.
It's well said. Well said.
Hot take of the week, John?
Hot take of the week. I'm sorry. I know I'm a curmudgeon, but I'm sick of seeing tweets about Kadarius Toney is, as Louis Riddick would say in all caps, a beast. When you look up and he has like 5 touches for 30 yards, like I'm sick of it. The Kadarius Toney takes are the hype beast takes of football Twitter right now, and that is where I'm planting my flag. He's like the best. He's like the best wide receiver for like in NFL history. Like nobody has ever talked about a receiver for this much.
I feel like he hasn't really done anything in the punt return game either, right? Because I've seen him like return punts, but not really like do anything crazy like I did every once in a while as a Gator.
Nah, I don't think so either. I don't think so. But that's where I plant my flag is that if you tweet about Kadarius Toney going crazy and he doesn't have 50 yards, then you should be put in Twitter jail.
All right, that's a pretty good one. Mine is I was gonna write an article before the season of like ranking playoff teams by what their NBA Jam duo would be. You know what I'm talking about with NBA Jam? And so like if it was like coaches and players, and so I didn't end up writing it because I didn't have time, feeling busy. So what? But the take is that Joe Burrow and Lou Anarumo from the Bengals, I think, is like the best just duo in the league right now. Like they're both just like piping hot and like playing or doing really well.
Dude, why doesn't Lou get interviews? He like that Bengals defense rules.
apparently he was like their like third or fourth like option, or like the third or fourth guy that they wanted when they were hiring when Zach Taylor was putting together his staff.
I had never heard of him before. Before then, so
I don't think I really had it until like last year's playoffs when like the Bengals had that great game plan against the Chiefs. But then like this whole year, like he's been cooking against like elite quarterbacks. He's kind of like the reason I was saying earlier, like the best strategy is to be able to be adaptable, because he's been so adaptable on defense and so great at putting his guys in positions to succeed.
Be water.
Be water. It's Jackie Chan, right?
Bruce Lee.
All right, we got to end the podcast now.
You jackass.
Oh my gosh. All right.
No.
Well, John's turned out a bunch of good stuff that I read to prepare for the podcast that you can find on jaguarreport.com. I have some stuff on bigcatcountry.com. Finished my prop bets column in the positive. I don't remember exactly what the record was, but I was proud of that. But yeah, hopefully this full stream worked. But episode 31 will be coming to you whenever we feel like it.
It did, and I feel like I'm glad we got this kicked back up and going, Gus. And I appreciate everybody for sticking for us for all of our multiple technical issues throughout the podcast. But what I'll say is, it's just part of the charm. It's like a good restaurant with dirty floors and a manager who openly apprehends customers. It's part of the charm. It
30 floors.
Yeah, that's how you know it's good.
All right.
Well, where are you eating? What are you doing? Eating at Roost Chris with Jackie Chan every night?
Yeah, I'm probably going to go Chipotle after this.
Okay, that's another hot take. Chipotle is overrated.
Yeah.
Moe's is better than Chipotle.
That's like a yesterday hot take, though. Like, that was a good hot take 2 years ago.
Moe's is better than
now
Chipotle.
I've heard that take too many times for it to be hot.
Cadobo is better than Chipotle.
Who? I don't know what that is.
Move it along.
That's on the other side of the river from me. All right. Let's end the stream. We'll see you guys